What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Trans Am episode. So today we're going to be installing a set of adjustable shocks. Up until now, we haven't really done anything performance-wise. I mean, we did a tune-up, we fixed the carb, but that's just because it was normal maintenance that the thing desperately needed. We did the AC, the hatch motor, but we haven't really done anything performance-orientated. And today that's going to change because this is going to be the first video of the performance mods that are going to come for this car. And for anybody who's new to the channel, click the link at the top of the screen. That's going to bring you my Trans Am playlist, and it'll kind of give you an idea on what my outline is for making this car a sleeper. But before we get started today, I just need to thank KONI for sponsoring today's episode. They got in contact with me, and they wanted to send me a set of their yellow adjustable shocks for my Trans Am. Now, for anybody who's familiar with the channel, you'll know that I've been running these exact same shocks in my Camaro for about 3 years now, and it is quite a famous shock in the third gen community. A lot of guys run these for autocross, road racing, even just daily drivers like I do with the Camaro. It is an adjustable shock, meaning you could go from soft to full firm. You could really dial the car in, and just overall the quality, they're just so well built. They ride amazing, and I am absolutely thrilled. We're going to be putting these in the Trans Am. Now, keep in mind, the suspension is totally stock on this car. The shocks that are in here, I don't know when they were replaced. They're in absolute garbage condition. I did go ahead and pick up some new factory replacement shock mounts just because they are most likely original. They don't look too bad, but we're putting some nice new shocks in there. We can at least get a new mount for these bad boys. But if you want some more information on these guys, click the link below the video. That'll take you to KONI's website, and you can check out the specs for yourself. But before we get started on the install, we might as well go take it for a ride, see how it drives and handles now, and then we'll go install these guys and see what the end result is. T-tops with no sun visors, no sunshades. Not very fun. Now, the ride quality in this thing, it's interesting. I'd probably describe it as somewhere between a 70s, 80s Cadillac and a shopping cart. So when you're cruising down the highway, especially at higher speeds, the whole ride is just kind of floaty, very lanyardy, like you're in a old Cadillac or something. When you actually hit a bump is where the shopping cart part comes in. Now, one thing to remember, this car is over 30 years old. They weren't built nearly as nice as cars today. There's a lot of squeaks, a lot of rattles. Nothing you can really do about that. But what we can do is improve the handling and improve the actual ride of the suspension. Now, as I mentioned, it's kind of hard over bumps, and it's kind of floaty on the highway. I don't know when the shocks were replaced. They could be original for all that. What I do know is that they are totally blown out. The oil has just left the shock, left the building, and it's pretty much just riding on springs right now. So let's get the Trans Am inside the garage here and start breaking it down. I'm going to start with the fronts, and then we'll move our way over to the back. I definitely recommend some impact tools for this job because the two front bolts that connect the shock to the spindle, they're pretty burly. They're going to be pretty damn rusty, and just using an electric impact or something is going to make this job a whole lot easier. But with the Trans Am up in the air and the wheel removed, that's basically it. We have easy access to the shock. You can see the way that it mounts to the spindle. It's kind of offset. It doesn't stick directly out from the fender. So you want to kind of turn the wheel all the way to the right when you're working on the left side, all the way to the left when you're working on the right side, and it's going to be easier to access those bolts. And both of these bolts here are 24 millimeters. But before we remove them, you want to get a floor jack and stick it underneath the control arm because the actual shock is what's holding the spring and everything up. So once you actually remove this, the spring might not come all the way out. It's wedged in there pretty good, but there is going to be some tension on it. And even just to get those bolts to slip out, you want to relieve that. So just by putting the jack under here, we're kind of going to compress the spring a bit. We can gun these two bolts out and then carefully lower it down and separate it from the spindle. So before we gun those two bolts out, one thing we need to do is remove the clip that's holding the brake line to the shock. This is held to the shock with this separate little bracket and a 13 millimeter bolt. You can easily just kind of slip that clip out with a vice grip, free up the hose from the hanger, and then once we actually go to put our new shocks in, we'll transfer that little bracket from the old stuff over to the KONIs. So with the bottom separated from the spindle, we're just going to take a 21mm nut and gun the upper mount nut off. Now, you're going to run into a problem where the whole shaft is going to spin, so when you're dealing with old junk that's getting thrown away, I just like to come in there with a vice grip, clamp it right around the cylinder piston kind of area, and that'll keep it from spinning, and you could gun it out. By no means do this to your new stuff going in, but when it comes to removing old junk, it works beautifully. But with the shock out of the way, we're ready to replace the mount. This is held to the car with 3 half-inch bolts. Now there's this kind of stud bracket underneath that actually goes through where the actual studs are coming out of. So by removing this, that whole entire piece just kind of drops down. Then you could pull the mount itself out. Now keep in mind, doing this is going to completely screw up your alignment. These cars from the factory kind of have a rivet. You can see that bottom hole right there. On the mount, there's supposed to be a rivet there, and that actually locks the alignment in from the factory. You're dealing with a car old enough, chances are that rivet was thrown out, drilled out, and the car was probably aligned before to a different spec. So by putting this in, we're going to kind of try to align these little dirt marks where you can see the outlines of the old bolts. That way the alignment isn't too screwed up. But if you're doing this job to a car that isn't really a project and you're driving it every day and you have a nice set of tires on it, keep in mind you are going to have this aligned, because no matter what you do, the spec is just going to get thrown off once you remove these mounts. So with the tower all cleaned up, we are ready to pop our new complete garbage crap strut mounts in, shock mounts, whatever you want to call them. You'll see what I mean later on in the video, but yeah, these guys end up coming out. They are complete trash, despite what they might actually look like. If you want to go pick these pieces of crap up, there are the part numbers right there. Get them at your own risk, because as I said, they suck. But obviously installation is complete reverse of removal. We're just going to slide the stud bracket back in, drop the mount on. And with this loose, you can see how the alignment's performed. You actually have a good 360 degrees of movement through this mount. You can adjust your camber, you can adjust your caster, and really get the alignment where you need it. So now that you can see exactly how much movement you have for the alignment spec, I'm just going to try to align this slot with that little wear mark from the old one in the paint. I definitely recommend maybe taking a Sharpie and outlining that before you actually remove the mount, just so you can get it as close as possible to where it was before you removed it. Oh, but look at this beautiful ass thing. Alright, so before we actually drop our new KONI shock in, first I'm just going to come in here and put some grease on the knuckle where it actually slides into the shock. Just because it's pretty crusty, obviously the shocks have some paint on them, and I want to make sure they go together nice and easy and we can get those bolts in without too much trouble. So with all the bolts tight, lastly we're going to take the little bracket off of rolled shock and just put the 13mm through the bolt in the side of the KONI, and then we could resecure our brake line with the clip. So last thing we need to do is tighten the top nut. All I'm using here is an 11mm on the actual strut itself, and by turning the shaft of the strut counterclockwise and holding that, you can get that nice and tight. One last thing, before putting the wheel back on, just turn the wheel left to right, make sure there are no weird popping, grinding, metal on metal noises from that mount. I was all good to go, so we're ready to pop on the wheel and move over to the back. So working on the back here, we're going to want to take the jack and pretty much do the same thing we did to the front. Just get it under the axle to lift the tension off of the shock. You're not going to really be able to get the stud to slide out of the bracket on the axle unless you relieve some of that pressure. So with the jack under there, we could gun the nut off. And the bushing on this one was so dried up and just falling apart, the whole entire stud started spinning inside of it. So I just took a vice grip to hold that kind of flat washer part on the back, and that was good enough to keep it steady while I gun the nut off. Now, unfortunately, accessing the top nut is a little more of a pain in the ass than the front. We're going to need to remove the plastic panels inside the car here to gain access. So simple enough, just remove the plastic. There's a few Phillips head screws holding it in at the top above the speaker, as well as the torque screw that actually holds the lock for the back seat. With that out of the way, you kind of just pull on the clips, the whole piece comes out, and then you could just kind of roll the carpet back and you'll see the actual nut underneath this piece of foam. Now, the adjustment for the back shock is done differently from the front. On the front, you kind of have a little knob at the top that you could turn, and that adjusts the dampening. On the back, we need to just pop down the dust shield, and you're going to see this little kind of check ball in there that we're going to press down, and that's going to allow us to turn the shaft on the strut and change the settings. So we have 3 different positions for this back one here. You can just kind of press the button down and then turn the rod of the shock, and you'll feel it kind of click to another position. After you feel that click, just kind of give it a little wiggle and you'll see the button come back up. Do it again. You'll move over to the next setting until you finally hit a wall. It won't move anymore. You'll know you're all the way at the end. So I'm going to actually set these to the middle, which is the number 2 setting. Same thing I run on the Camaro. I haven't actually made any adjustments to these since I put them in the Camaro, but with the new setup in the 6.0, who knows, you might actually have to go in there and make some adjustments if we run into traction problems at the drag strip. But with the shock on setting 2, we're just going to pop the plastic cover back over, and then we're ready to install them. Just a quick little test here comparing the old shock that came out to the new KONI. I can easily kind of compress the old one just with the finger. Absolutely no effort. We move over to the KONI, and it kind of gives you an idea of how bad the old shocks really were. So after getting the driver's side all finished up, I moved over to the passenger side, removed the panel, and found mouse duty. So I didn't want to really disrupt this, so I just took the vacuum out, sucked it all up, because that's the exact spot that I need to touch to roll the carpet over to gain access to this side. All right, guys, the first real drive with the new shocks here. When I initially pulled out of the driveway, I heard a squeaking, very loud, just squeaking noise coming from the front left. went around the block quick, pulled in, heard a popping noise coming from the front right, and it turns out that the brand new Mevotech shock mounts were complete trash. The bushing was just popping around inside the housing, and I just quickly swapped them out, put the original 35-year-old mount in there, and everything is pretty much a-okay. But on the first initial drive here, going through some curvy stuff, I gotta say, it feels basically stock. Now remember, we have the fronts on full soft right now, the backs are on the middle setting, so I'm on 2, fronts are completely soft. It doesn't feel violent, it doesn't feel like overly harsh. And remember, I'm running these in the Camaro, but the difference with running them in the Camaro, that has the thin tires, it's got 18s on it, it has poly bushings, you know, upgraded sway bars, Derlin, front control arm bushings, everything is pretty much upgraded. On this, we're riding on a stock 215, 60 or 65-inch cushy 15-inch tire, stock, you know, ancient bushings from the 80s, stock springs, original stock springs. But it feels pretty damn comfortable on soft. There's some quick stuff here. Okay, it's definitely more planted in the turns. A lot less body roll, for sure. Oh yeah. Way better in the turns. You know, these cars handled great when they were new. That's kind of what they were known for. These and the Camaros, they were known just for having, you know, great handling. They definitely weren't quick, but handling cars they were. And I mean, when I first got this thing, I was even impressed with just you saw the shocks we pulled out, the blown out, completely shot OEM stuff. But putting these in, 100%, rides to me, totally stock, not violent, feels a lot more planted in the corners, and we still have to pop the hood and firm them up a bit. So let's pull over right now. The backs we're gonna leave where they are, and we're gonna put the fronts, I'm gonna crank them all the way up to full firm, because remember, we're sitting on that cushy tire, stock bushing, stock springs. Let's pump it up all the way and see how much better it can handle. Alright, so I got the little knob here. I just hopped under the hood quick, put them both on full firm. We got the back still in the middle. Oh wow. Damn. Just me, even the brakes feel better. All right. Wow. Way more planted. But just the response of the suspension, it's just quick. It's like that, each bump, just over with. And I actually think I'm gonna leave them on full firm because with all that original stuff, springs and bushings, just having the shocks on firm, it definitely feels like there's more done to it than there is. There's crap all inside this car. There's just like plastic panels and stuff, so we're gonna hear a lot of stuff moving around now. Oh damn. Way better. It seriously cut down on the body roll. And it's on a friggin', like this squishy tire, squishy springs. I mean, once again, these cars never handled badly. I mean, they just respond so damn well to upgrade, especially when it comes to suspension. The car is just flat. I don't know how well the back camera is actually picking that up. Yeah, okay, so my vote is definitely, at least for now, to keep it on full firm. Obviously, once we get to wheels and tires and other bushings, that might change because it might get a little too firm, at least for driving on the street every day. But definitely huge improvement over just doing like a stock AC Delco cheap, you know, $15 Monroe garbage. Definitely go for the nicer stuff, especially if you're serious about doing either road course driving or even autocross. Just having the adjustability to be able to, you know, keep it soft on the street, go to the track, not only firm it up, but you can dial it in. Even both sides of the car individually, you can have one slightly firmer than the other. Just get everything right where you want it. That's kind of the whole reason behind weight jacks too. So with our first suspension mod done to the Trans Am, what's going to be next is most likely sway bar bushing, sway bar links, and I'm probably going to refresh the entire front end as far as the tie rod, idler arm, and stuff like that go. For the springs, right now I'm keeping the stock stuff. I really don't want to drop this thing down, especially having the Camaro lowered and the route I'm going to be going with the setup as far as the turbo kit. I need all the ground clearance I could get. So at most, I might actually pick up a new replacement set of factory springs. Now remember my goal for this car. This is a sleeper build. So ride comfort, ride quality, the wheel gap, all that stuff is stuff I'm taking into consideration. But at the same time, it is going to end up with a shitload of power, and we want to make sure the suspension can handle it. That's exactly why I went with a high quality adjustable shock to kind of make up for using the factory spring and some other shortcomings that there might be in the factory suspension. But before I close this video out, once again, I want to thank KONI for sending me these shocks for the Trans Am. As I mentioned, I've used these in the Camaro. They seem to be the go-to shock for these cars. And when KONI wanted to send me a set, I was absolutely thrilled. You know, a lot of companies want to reach out to YouTubers, send them free stuff, get some publicity to sell their product. With me, I'm very picky with that stuff. There's a lot of companies that can contact with me with electronic stuff that I just kind of turn them away. I'm not going to try to sell you something that's absolute crap, that I haven't used before, that I have no experience in, that I have no concrete evidence that is a decent product. So once again, when I started talking with KONI and they wanted to send me a set of shocks for the Trans Am, I was blown away because this was a part that was on the build list for this car. I was getting a set of KONI shocks. Whether they were going to work with me or not, I was going to buy them with my own money. That's how much I love them in the Camaro. Just look online, thirdgen.org, Google it. Lots of guys run these shocks, and I've heard nothing but the best. Once again, I'm going to put a link to their website directly below the video if you want to go check for yourself. Put in your vehicle, make, model, see what they have to offer for your car. But for now, that is going to do it for this Trans Am episode. And for anyone who may have been wondering, I am staying with the voiceover format. I know a lot of you guys seem to like it. There is going to be more Camaro content very soon. I got the rotating assembly back from the machine shop. It's all balanced and we're ready to go in a 6.0. But I hope you guys enjoyed this next installment in the Trans Am series. Click one of the links on the top of the screen if you want to go check out the playlist on this car, as well as check out some stuff on my Camaro. But once again, that is going to do it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.